I'm obsessed with fragrance. I believe it's the most powerful sense you have. So I decided that I was going to build the world's best bath and body brand right then and there.
Welcome to Taking Care of Lady Business, where we have conversations about power, value, and success on your own terms. I'm talking with women who are building influence, wealth, and authority, not by following someone else's playbook, but by deciding what success looks like for themselves. These are candid conversations, hard-earned perspectives, and no BS insight from women who aren't asking permission. They're setting the standard. I'm your host, Jennifer Justice. Most people call me JJ. Let's get into it. Hi, everyone. Welcome to this episode of Taking Care of Lady Business. I'm Jennifer Justice. Today we have Nicole Eckels. She's the founder of Glasshouse Fragrances. Hi, Nicole. How are you?
Hello. Thanks for having me, Jennifer.
I am excited for the audience to hear this. You have a very unique female founder story. One is that you moved to Australia as a single mom with a 12-year-old child as a makeup artist. And here I am talking to you in tens of $1 million revenue, candle fragrance company. You couldn't be further from that story, right? Your origin story. Like, what did you do? What made you make that move and the whole kind of origin of that?
It's funny because true. I mean, I have a sort of unusual story. I'm an expat essentially, so had decided that I wanted to live overseas. I had a son who was 12 at the time, but that didn't stop me. And I sort of looked at the globe and said, where should I go and move and live? And there was something very appealing to me about Australia. When I looked at the globe and said, okay, what country am I moving to? I mean, because that's really how it went. I got sick of being in New York City. It was really expensive. I was worried about my son as a single mother raising a son in New York City where there's very little supervision. They can jump on the subway and be God knows where. And I just thought, okay, I'm going to live somewhere where it's safer for him, hopefully better work-life balance, these sort of things. And I decided on Australia. And it was the strangest thing because nowadays, if you said suddenly, oh, I'm going to Australia, I mean, it's impossible to migrate here. But back then, 20 years ago, this was 20 years ago in 2004, I decided I was going to go move to Australia. And when I arrived here, the first thing I noticed was, where's all the stuff? It felt like a buzzy, vibrant urban environment, especially in Sydney, where I am now half the year now. But I went from the largest beauty market in the world to one of the smallest ones. There's 25 million people here. There's 300 million in the US. It's the largest fragrance market in the world. And I arrived and there was just very little. It was all very Macy's brand, mass prestige. There was no niche, no nuances, there weren't even any Bath and Body Works. I would have been happy for that. There was a L'Occitane and there was a body shop, and it was just all game over for me because I'm obsessed with fragrance. I believe it's the most powerful sense you have. So I decided that I was going to build the world's best Bath and Body brand right then and there.
How long had you been living in Australia at the time? And you were still a makeup artist?
I had just moved here and I went to the store to buy these products because I was living in this crappy little apartment as you do when you're starting out. And it was right at overlooking the harbor bridge, but the bed folded out of the wall and it was just little. And I needed a luxurious scent to elevate my environment and make me feel like I was somewhere more glamorous. My view was certainly glamorous, but you know what I'm saying. I decided that I'm going to build this Bath and Body brand. I'm going to do perfumes. I'm going to do body lotion and body wash and all of these things. But I'm going to start with a scented candle because I couldn't find a single one of those. And in doing so, I created the scented candle category down under and now in Australasia. And we are the largest fragrance brand in the Southern Hemisphere 20 years later. It'll be our 20th anniversary in December.
Yeah. And wait, I read some kind of stat like one of your candles gets sold like every 20 minutes or something like that. Isn't it something crazy?
Yeah, that's right.
you're like an accidental entrepreneur. And then so what was it about being there that made you think, oh, you know what, now is okay for me to be an entrepreneur versus when you were in New York?
The big difference is it's the opportunity, right? I think that's the magic secret sauce. You go to another market and something that you use or you know that you love or you identify a gap or a need. And that's exactly what happened to me. It is accidental. But I will say, that being said, I have always been a very entrepreneurial person. So when I was a kid, I was making bracelets for money, I was making cookies, I was buying candy and reselling it, anything to make a buck because I've always loved fashion and experiences, and I've always had this sense of needing those things in my life. And I was one of four children. My mom was a nurse, my dad worked for the state. They weren't particularly great at managing money. There was not disposable income for Nicole to go off and buy the $100 Nike sneaker she wanted. Well, they probably weren't 100 that many years ago, but it was that. And I just thought, I'm going to figure this out myself. And I did. And I did. I had the burning hustle desire.
Right. Which I guess is what it takes. But, you know, there's usually a long journey between having the idea, wanting to do it, and then executing it in a way that can grow to a company with tens of millions of dollars, you know? So walk me through that. Like, how long did it take you to really like get your first product in a store and selling and getting some momentum?
Well, I think the main thing is I am a New Yorker, I'm an American. We culturally can be quite entrepreneurial and capitalistic, I suppose. That sounds negative, but we work, that's what we do. And I came to this market and I didn't see the category being done. And in my mind, I thought there were like hundreds of Australians and possibly Americans here plotting to start the same business I had in my mind. I was like, oh my God, this is just a matter of time. It's so obvious. I've got to hurry up. And that's exactly what happened. Like, I was like, oh my God, I have to hurry up. Someone is going to do this. It's just a matter of minutes. And I was just in a rush, 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 rush. But I didn't have, to your point, like, how in the world do you execute? I'd never made beauty products before, fragrance products or candles, which now I know is one of the hardest things in the world to make. It really is. And I didn't have the money. So I found an angel investor. And this person was wonderful because Australian, had lived in the States, were happened to be looking for, because he's a surgeon, happened to be looking for an opportunity that was more passive income based because trading time for money when you're a surgeon, that's what you're doing. And the planetary orbit just lined up, the sun, moon, and stars, they all came together. And when I met Warwick, I said, look, I have this idea. It took me like 4 or 5 visits to meetings to disclose the full thing because I was terrified someone was going to steal my idea. And he said, no, I get it. Like, I remember being in the States and seeing a lot of these sort of scented products around, and we don't have them here. And I think it sounds like a great idea. I'm really interested in investing in that. And I didn't need a lot of money, relatively speaking. When you think about venture capital and these people having to raise round 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and A, B, C, D, E, F, G, it wasn't that. I just needed a chunk of money to hire my design team, import the raw materials. But the big thing was we had to make our products ourselves. And that is what's different here. So at the time, there were no contract manufacturers. Most beauty entrepreneurs go and they have this idea and they design it, and then a contractor makes it. In my case, that didn't exist. So we had to become the manufacturer and the brand.
And was it just you? I mean, and were you working a full-time job at this point?
I was working a full-time job when I met my angel investor and raised enough money that I could quit my job and focus full-time on this idea.
Was that your only investor like that you met with?
The only one I met with. And that was it. And that's the only investor we've ever had. However, unlike a lot of entrepreneurs who cash out along the way, we've invested, both he and I have put all of the money we've ever made right back into the business for growth. And that includes expanding in the US. Like we're funding all of that. So that's the difference.
And why are you making that decision instead of going to raise more money, given the fact that it should be quote unquote easier? You have a track record and it's really like a growth round. You could probably raise debt against it. Why this route?
Well, we never really needed it. And we thought because of the choice to put the money back in, I've been paid a salary the entire time I've worked for or been in my business. It's a modest salary. It's not to market. That's fine. I've never needed more than that. Our passion has been building this amazing thing and supporting that idea and that growth. And I derive so much joy from the joy that my products bring to our customers. And they really do. I mean, we have a very, very loyal, obsessive group of customers that have been with us for a long time and new customers coming into our brand.
Did anything about the kind of lifestyle that you needed or wanted to have, having a son that was still at home and a single mom, like, did that play into the kind of structure that you had in your business?
Not so much. I think that I've just been really focused on reinvesting in the business, growing the business. And I suppose I didn't want ultimately the distraction of someone else coming in and telling us what we can and can't do, where we should and shouldn't grow, deciding what creative we can and can't do. I wanted control because I'm trying to build, when I say trying, we are building a global luxury fragrance brand. And when I say we are trying, we're doing it. And it's been 20 years. And we take risks that other brands would never take. And it's because we're privately owned. I'm convinced of it.
Yeah, you don't have those other people weighing in on their opinions, knowing that they have a real financial stake in it. When did you know that this was a real business? Like, how long into it?
Before the entire investment came through from my angel, we did a bit of a little market trial where I literally made these products in my kitchen because I didn't have the money to set up a factory. And I had a few retailers that I've reached out to sell the product, and I did it on consignment. So I said, here's, 30 candles and let's see how you go. And if they sell, pay me, kind of stuff. And I did that in 10 stores, 10 or 12 stores. Those candles sold out in under a week. And that's when I knew. So it was really even before we actually started. I mean, I remember year after year going, when are we not going to be in double digit growth? And in fact, it's been 20 years and we have never been in decline. So we had a bit of a bump during COVID because everyone stayed home and people weren't going to the office. And of course, when you do that, you're using more, especially home fragrance products. There was a lift for sure. And so that had to normalize. But if you pulled that out, just growth.
When was your first hire?
So first hire happened pretty quickly because we needed someone to answer the phones. Because back in those days, now I sound old. Back in those days.
Yeah. Well, the iPhone came out like literally 2 years later.
Yeah, this is before that. And nowadays, no one calls anybody anymore. It's all on the computer. Yeah, I needed someone to answer the phones. And I also needed someone to make the candles. So that was also right away because I wasn't physically making them. I was busy out on the pavement, hitting the pavement, meeting retailers, talking about the product, building brand. Then I think year 2, we hired a sales manager to support that. We needed to start hiring finance, ops. The one that took the longest, which is pretty typical, was HR because you have to wait till you have a certain amount of people before it's like, okay, we need someone. We need an HR person. Now we have about 250 people. That took the longest.
And when you're doing this, like, you're learning on the job, like you're flying the plane while you're building it.
Yes.
Did you
Still
have
am.
any kind of board? Did you have a mentor? Like, who is helping you think through all of these things?
In the beginning, I didn't have a single person. You're learning everything. And, the reality is if you could hire someone to do what you're going through, you'd have to hire another entrepreneur who's a successful entrepreneur who's done it. No one can advise you. So I had to pick like this person knows a little bit and this person knows a little bit. But one of the biggest mistakes that I made and can continue to make if I'm not careful is relying on the advice of one person too closely. That is a killer because no one really knows and everyone has a different opinion about things. That being said, later on, as the business really scaled and was much, much larger, I think that's where I drew the most help from mentors or people supporting that because they had come from that. And there's a lot of stuff that you can't even figure out or Google or whatever. I suppose now with AI, it's a little bit easier because you can get some of the information. You still get bad advice and you still have to filter it. And so that's been my thing now is I never ever just go, oh, this person knows what they're doing because we're just human and we all make mistakes.
So what is that barometer? Is it also your gut? Like, how do you know? You just trusting your instinct?
It's definitely gut. I used to be all about gut and people and personality. Now it's definitely a combination of that. That's still, 80% of it. But the other part is what is your actual experience? What did you do? What roles did you hold? What experience do you have? That really matters a lot when you're at this level.
I so appreciate that. We talk about that a lot on the podcast. I talk about it a lot in advice. We are inundated with not just AI, but social media, all these people who are like life coaches and they're 25 or, finance experts and they've never worked in finance or legal experts and they're not lawyers. And it's really dangerous. And thankfully, some countries, ban it. Others like us don't, to the point that there was a massive article in the New York Times about all these older wellness people that are all AI, not real people, selling to the elderly and just making a killing. So you have to do that. But it's also like you got to think about the advice as women that we get, right? It's often, let's play it safe. Don't rock the boat, all of this over and over again. And you have to think, well, who's going to gain if I take that advice? And who's going to lose if I take that advice, right? So I love that perspective because it's so true. It's great to get advice. It's great to like get like a devil's advocate kind of feedback, etc., and look at all angles. But ultimately, the choice is yours. You are the boss, and you're the one whose head's going to roll if something bad happens, right?
And those decisions have impact. They have impact. And I would even go a step further. You have behaviors and then you have skills, and they're both equally important. And one without the other is not useful. So I would go as far as to do a ref check in a way on someone. If someone's that experienced, they've left a trail. People leave trails. And you can find their reputation or find out more about their reputation, what sort of their integrity, how they've impacted others, and no one can run from it. And that's why I really have always said your integrity, who you are, that matters more than anything because you may not know everything and that's okay. And you may not have the skills, but don't say that you do when you don't. You know what I mean? It's just ridiculous. And certainly, it's like influencers when you watch these programs and they're talking about this is the best restaurant and they're showing pictures. And you're like, you're 25. I don't even care what you say. Because unless you're in your 40s and you've traveled all over the world and eaten all these restaurants, you wouldn't know if that's the best burger you've. I mean, I'm making it up. Burger is probably something else. But you know what I mean? Like, I'm not paying attention to you.
Speaking of people who did not have your best interests at heart, there is a time, right, in Glasshouse where your leadership team tried to basically get you out, right?
Yeah. I had hired a GM. It was completely my fault because when you hire a team, you need to be really clear about what you want them to achieve. And the mistake that I made was, and this kind of goes back to what I was saying before, is hiring someone who looks like they know what they're doing, but you actually assuming a whole bunch of things about what they're going to actually do instead of saying, right, this is the vision. This is what we want to achieve. This is when I want it done by. You tell me how you're going to do that. So that didn't happen. So that's my fault. So instead, I said, oh, this person's, professional general manager. They come from a beauty background. They'll know what to do. But what happened was what they thought should be done and what I was trying to achieve were two different things. And that is what the problem was. I was trying to build the world's biggest and best fragrance brand, and they were trying to build Australia's largest home fragrance brand. Now, those are two different things. And at the time, I had a board because I thought I should, which was the most ridiculous thing. It's stupid. And the board was more supportive of the GM because I was the crazy, delusional founder. Therein lies the whole entire problem. And now I can summarize it. But let me tell you, when you're in it, it's very confusing and you don't know what's going on. It's far behind me. That is precisely what was going on. But the problem the board had is they weren't the owners. And I had to learn that, hold on a minute, I'm the owner. I am responsible for the board too. So it took me a long time to find my strength, to realize that I wasn't an employee. This was my business. But I am a naturally anti-confrontational person. I've learned how to overcome that constructively. I am. And so I was always trying to make everybody happy and keep the peace until it became obvious that if I didn't do something, I would lose my business altogether. And what was the point? What was the point of moving all the way to the other side of the world and giving up my family in New York and going through all the blood, sweat, and tears if someone was just going to undermine and take my business from me, essentially? So that's how it kind of went. And let's face it, it's a lot easier and more tangible from a person who's incented in a short-term basis to go after what they know they can get, as opposed to believing in a really big vision that's very long term and going after that. They didn't know how to do that. They weren't a bad person. They just didn't know how to do that. The problem is with employees is, and when I say problem, it's not a problem. If they are not remunerated in a way that allows them to focus long term, then they won't. And that was also my fault. So I'm actually the one to blame here. But hindsight is 2020 vision.
I want to get to that remuneration part because I think it's really important and it's not something that we talk about a lot here, but I represent a lot of female executives and who get fired from big companies for basically being a woman. So I want to get to that because I think it's so important. I want to go back a little bit because obviously we started talking about this is your company, you started it, you're an entrepreneur, you're building the company, you knew you didn't want to take a bunch of outside money and you held all the power. At what point did that switch? Where you were like, wait a minute. And then you were trying to like talk to the board and you were confused, et cetera. And then finally, like it switched again, like, wait, I still have all the power.
Yeah, it was a very confusing time. My angel investor was also on the board. He has always been supportive of me, but he was getting confused too. And I needed him and his 100% support. And like me, he is very rational, wants to get to the bottom of something, doesn't want to have conflict either. So it took us a while to figure out what was going on. We didn't want to dismantle the board. We didn't want to create all this drama. We didn't want that. He's working full time as a surgeon. I'm trying to run the business and not create additional issues for him. So we had to go through that. I brought in someone to mentor and help me through that, who's still in our business today and who had seen it all. Dysfunctional boards. He'd seen it all. And he walked around and he goes, oh, this is what's happening. And that's my point. Like someone who's actually done it, seen it, he knew exactly what was going on. At the time, I think it was like a $10 million business. He's like, you're like a $10 million business. Why do you have all these people on your board? They're confusing you. They're creating drama. Why is this going on? And they're not even clear what you and the owners, meaning me and my angel investor, want to achieve. They need to know that because their job, their actual job, is to put that agenda forward and ensure that the management team is executing to that. So I didn't fully understand any of that.
Let's go back to that remuneration part you were talking about. Like I said, I represent a lot of female executives. We represent a lot of female founders, a lot of female executives. We know that the gender pay gap got increased, right? We make less than we did even last year. That doesn't seem to be going anywhere for some reason. But then Nike just lost, $7.5 million to an employee because she proved gender disparity, gender discrimination. And all they had to do is pay her another $19,000 a year, and they refused. And so they lost, and it took 8 years, but they lost, and it's like enough is enough. And I'm sure we're not just talking about women here, we're talking about women and men, we're talking about in your company. Pay people and they'll be loyal to you, and know that they're going to be making something. So talk a little bit more about what you meant about long-term remuneration.
Well, first of all, like it's a no-brainer, isn't it? What you just said, pay people what they're worth. So mine is more around not so much pay gap, gender. It's about how are you incentivizing people to get the outcome that you want. If it's just a salary and a bonus for the year, then all that person, and when I say all that person, I'm talking about especially if they're motivated primarily by money, because some people are, is reaching or achieving the goals set for that year. Founders and owners never think in a year, 12-month increments. They're thinking in 5, 10, 15, whatever their exit, wherever they want to go. That's what they're thinking about. So to align the employee or someone's working for you to that sort of where you're trying to go requires a longer term incentive. So that's the first thing that I meant to say. In terms of pay gap and gender, it's an awful thing. We don't have that in our business. We genuinely don't have it. I don't care if you're a man or a woman. There's two things. What is the market paying? It's just like a house. You want to buy a house, this is what that house costs in that neighborhood. So people are the same. If you want skills, that experience, where they've been, this is what it costs. And if the person doesn't know their worth, that's half the problem. Because any smart business person is going to pay the person, if they say, look, I'd be very happy with $100,000 making it up, but market's paying 120, company's going to pay them 100 and maybe give them a little bonus. Well, I'm getting a great deal. Let me make sure I really keep this person happy and throw them a little extra money now and then they'll be thrilled. That's how businesses operate. So if a woman is on a lower salary or a man's on a lower salary and their expectations are a certain number and that's what you pay and they're happy days, where it gets difficult if someone is historically on a lower salary and then suddenly they cotton on to it and they need a $40,000 increase and the company says no. That's the issue. So all pay is done by what are you being paid now? And what's the market paid? If I have 5 applicants in front of me and this is what they're all charging, I'm going to look at the skills and attributes of those people and I'm going to choose the best deal. That's life. I don't know how women get into a situation or we've gotten into a situation where women are treated differently than that, because that's the way it works for me. And I can't understand how it could work differently for anybody else. It makes no sense.
No, it's true. And that's one of the things. It's like, look, a system wasn't built for us, right? But we can choose how to react to it, right? We can let it just tell us what to do and, live by the rules that were created, or we can break the rules and we can ask for the things that are ours. And if the company isn't going to do that for you, then you need to make a choice.
And this is the thing. If you can go get that money somewhere else, go get that money somewhere else.
And look, it's not that easy. Sometimes you have to stay there for a while. Sometimes it's years. But don't give your all to a place that's not giving their all to you, right? And it takes, female founders who have been in these situations and been underestimated and, have seen it all to make these kinds of changes. So good for you and applause. And, we hope that's how we want the big, successes for women and et cetera. All right, let's go a little bit back to you guys launching in the US during COVID.
So it was 2020 And I had gone home for Christmas, like I do every year, to see my family. And I had a Japan Airlines ticket because that was the flight I could get out of. Because at the time, Australia had gone through one lockdown and was about to go into its second. But I didn't know that at the time when I left. And my flight was just canceled, 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 canceled. And then there was no rebooking. And I said, okay, I'm in the US. It was lovely to be stuck there, by the way, because I was back in New York and I was like, oh, this is amazing. And I'm like, well, I can't get back to Australia. So at that time in 2020, my business here in Australia was mature and it was running on rails, basically. I didn't really need to do much. Everything was just going, and we're a household name here. We make the most incredible stuff and products, and it was just fine. It was Glasshouse was doing so well. And I just thought, you know what? I'm here in the US. I've been coming and going for a decade, and no one, not a single other brand has managed to do what we do, Glasshouse does. So I might as well have a go and let's start it. So let's expand in the US. And because we had plenty of cash and we still do, we said, all right, we'll just fund it. So I put together a paper for my partner and I said, this is what I want to do. This is what it's going to cost. Are we ready to start expanding into the US? And the answer was yes, why not? And that was in 2020. And when I say height of COVID, it was, but COVID in the US didn't look like COVID in Australia. COVID in Australia was locked down. You're in your house, you can't leave. Everything came to a halt, travel in and out. In the US, I'd go to Atlanta or Texas and I'd be like, what COVID? People weren't even wearing masks. It was crazy. And in New York, it was like, oh, you just have to show your vaccine to go to the restaurant. Like it was ridiculous compared to what was happening in Australia. And so, in a way, I was really lucky to be locked down or remaining in the US. So we started Glasshouse there. And my first retailer was the Hut Group. And then shortly, which is an online beauty retailer. And then straight after that, we started to partner with Bloomingdale's and then Neiman Marcus and then Saks. And then today we just started our relationship with Nordstrom, which is going great. And the business is going from strength to strength. And I'm really lucky because I have the most amazing team there that I hired, and they're just amazing. But also, we went into the most cluttered market.
That's what I was going to say. Like you hit it. Like you go into the US, it's like there's candles, they're sold everywhere. You know what I mean? And there's a ton of them. How did you differentiate yourself?
So we look incredible, we smell incredible, but for the money, and I used to say for the money, you cannot buy a better product than Glasshouse. You can't. It doesn't exist, especially candles. Like I can tell you, I've burned them all, I've used them all from all over the world because that's what I do. And you just cannot find anything better that has the complexity of scent, the quality of burn, the way it looks, the way just every attribute that makes a great product, home fragrance product, we're nailing. And I think it has something to do with the fact that we haven't been feeding off competitors. Like, what are they doing? What's their new scent? We'll do something like that. We've been somewhere else on the other side of the world doing what I love and creating what I love. And I haven't been looking. And so when we arrived in the US, it was like, oh, this is different. It looks different. It acts different. It smells differently. It's not overpriced. It's luxurious. We're reverent. We're fun. We're a beauty brand and we act like it. And it's been absolutely great. And we've had great retailers who really get it. And you need that. Otherwise, you won't. We're not retailers ourselves. We wholesale. So we need partners that really get it and support the brand and understand the value of it. And they did right away when they saw it. They go, wow, this is categorically different. The fresh perspective of being an Australian brand, which is funny because every time I meet with someone, they like wait for me to open my mouth in this cute accent comes out and it just doesn't. So that was always a letdown for the retailers.
Did you ever let yourself even have a contingency plan if it didn't work out? I mean, you're fine in Australia, right? So you like launch in the US, if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. Or were you like, no, this is happening?
Of course, in my mind, this is happening, but I could have been wrong. I had a good feeling about it. I thought, am I deluding myself? I remember I was just so anxious all the time because I didn't know. And I had convinced, my partners to put in all this money to help with the expansion. And they willingly did it and they believe in me and they still believe in me. And, I'm not perfect. I get it wrong. So I'm very lucky it all went the way that we hoped. And it's knock on wood, it seems to still be going that way.
Congrats to you. So I'm glad that it wasn't just one of those, oh, well, we tried. So amazing. So your whole journey as an entrepreneur now over these last 20 years and a female founder, like, what did you learn about your own power and voice that you didn't know?
I am a very lucky female in that I'm nearly 6 foot. I'm the size of a linebacker. My physical presence, I'm loud and I'm very strong, as in, don't tell me what I can and can't do, but I'm not rude. And as I shared with you, I don't like conflict. But all of that has supported me. And also, I had a mother who said, I was unaware that being a girl was anything less than being a man or there were disadvantages associated with that. I was completely unaware of that. And then I went into sales, typically, depending on the category, supportive of women because we're better communicators, we're more relationship focused. So I was in that career. And then I went into beauty. So I'm very lucky in that I haven't tried to do something like you, Jennifer, being a lawyer. That's a tougher gig. And finance are tougher gigs than what I've had. So I've been very fortunate in my career choices to not go against the grain. It wasn't until now or the past few years where I'm dealing with a lot of financial matters that I feel a little bit, oh, that's where the girl comments come from. It's suddenly happening.
Crazy after 20 years and like building a big business.
After 20 years, well, more than that, because I'm in my 50s. So I've been operating in business since I was, the minute I graduated college, I've been working. So it's rearing its ugly head now. And part of me goes, is this because I'm a woman and I'm also very kind and people can take advantage? But the other thing is, like, I'm shit at finance. Like, I'm a creative. And yes, I can read a P&L and I can do all of that. It doesn't come naturally to me. And my male counterparts, gosh, they can look at a spreadsheet and an extra zero pops out like, as we say in Australia, like dog's balls. And I can't see it.
The people who you can trust that have gone through it and know exactly where they stand in it, not they're executing your vision, not theirs. So you've gone through it enough, you have the experience, you're not 25, so you understand what you need to do. So I have all the confidence it's going to work out. But I do ask one question of every one of our guests, and that is, what is the worst advice you've ever received?
Well, I can, but it's nothing related to business. I trusted a lawyer on an immigration matter, and the advice that I got was completely incorrect and created a lot of drama and problems for me. But outside of that, hire good lawyers.
Thank
Hire
you.
good lawyers.
Yes.
There you go. That's the best advice. And that's from the worst, because the worst advice I got was from a bad lawyer.
All right, we'll take it. Well, thank you so much for being on this episode. If people want to find you or Glasshouse Fragrances, where can they do that?
Well, we are distributed all throughout the US. We're in about 2,000 independent retailers. So think of your beautiful little local gift and home or beauty door, as well as Nordstrom, Bloomingdale's, Anthropologie, and Blue Mercury also are stockists of ours. And you can hit us up on Instagram, Glasshouse Fragrances.
Amazing. What's your favorite fragrance that you have?
I say they are all my children, but I will tell you the one that people just cannot get enough of is Kyoto in Bloom. It's a beautiful amber vanilla scent, and everyone's mad over it. There's a bunch of them, like the Hamptons as well, or Amalfi Coast, but that one seems to be irresistible. And Jennifer, thank you so much for having me
No,
on
of course,
today.
of course. I love your story. I love it. Anytime I can highlight a female founder doing it her own way, understanding, walking in her power, not underpaying other people and giving it back and moving it forward, I love it. So thank you so
Oh,
much for
thanks.
being on. And to everyone listening to this episode of Taking Care of Lady Business, until next time, I'm Jennifer Justice. Thanks to MedJet for supporting the Taking Care of Lady Business podcast. When you travel for work or internationally, the real question isn't if something could happen, it's whether you've planned for it. That's why I'm a member of MedJet and have been for years. If your security is threatened or you're hospitalized while traveling, MedJet can get you home and to the hospital you choose, not just the closest one. It's not travel insurance. It's about not leaving critical decisions to chance. If you travel regularly, it's worth having in place. You can learn more at medjet.com. Thanks for tuning in to Taking Care of Lady Business. If this was useful, subscribe and share with a friend. Make sure to check out the show notes for more on my guest and me, Jennifer Justice. Taking Care of Lady Business is a production of Lady Business LLC. See you next time.